bastante. ¿Ven? Y así va con Nvidia, chicos. O sea, esto es increíble. ¿Ok? Tum, toma. Como que cuando les pega, o sea, cuando les pega, como que recuperan el color.
Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Black Myth Wukong. Now we've talked about this game quite a bit in the past as it's been shrouded in controversy after controversy. Anyways, here the game just released to an absolutely smashing success. Right now on Steam, it's got an overwhelmingly positive review with over 55,000 reviews. Furthermore, tracking the amount of people currently playing games on Steam, and Black Myth Wukong is sitting in #1 by a wide margin. This game right now is more popular than Counter-Strike 2, Dota 2, and the mighty Banana. In fact, for the all-time peak, it's currently sitting in 4th overall, which is extremely impressive. I mean, it's behind PUBG, Palworld, Counter-Strike 2, and well, there we've got Black Myth Wukong. It is ahead of stuff like Elden Ring, Dota 2, and Lost Ark, and even more. This is very impressive for a game that has been very controversial. So let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Do you think the marketing surrounding this game, both good and bad, helped propel it to this status? I'm very curious to see what the overall thoughts are. If you've played Black Myth Wukong, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below as well. Next up, we're talking about PS1 emulation with DuckStation, and DuckStation just got a brand new update. Now, DuckStation is on a rolling release schedule. It gets updated quite frequently, and the development team is very active. The latest update here is not for Android. Android has not been updated since January, at least to my knowledge, both on Google Play and the APK directly from their website. Anyways, here we've got a bunch of bug fixes, optimizations, and improvements. It is available on GitHub for a bunch of different operating systems. Again, just not Android. But moving on, and next up we're talking about a brand new indie game in development for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. This one is called Drift and Rage. We have talked about this one in the past, and the developer has just shared some more updated gameplay. Although the developer has shared there's still a lot of work left to do, the game in this state currently, in my opinion, looks really good. I mean, there's motorcycles, there's cars, there's a bunch of different tracks, a bunch of different drivers, and the graphics on this one look pretty crisp. Next up, we're talking about a ROM hack for ToeJam and Earl, and Billy Time Games says ToeJam and Earl Funkatronic Remix is here, new and crazy ways to play. So this ROM hack is for ToeJam and Earl on the Genesis, and it's up over on romhackplaza.org. As for the changes here, there's a 3-time duration for items. Faster startup, skip the flying ship at the Sega logo. Earl starts with less presents. Santa is easier to sneak up on. And starting items can be randomized, and there's also now cheats. And if you wanted to see this ROM hack in action, Billy Time does have a video of it up on his YouTube page, and I do recommend checking it out. And speaking about game development, next up we're talking about something you might be interested in if you're into NES or SNES game development, or if you like playing NES or SNES homebrew games. We're talking about NES Maker, which is about to get a name change to the Game Forge. The big reason here is that NES Maker is going to be getting an update, and you'll be able to create SNES games with it. If you are curious about this one at all, check out the NES Maker Direct that just popped up on YouTube. There's a ton of great information about the project, what's to come, and also some other stuff. For example, they've introduced something that was new to me here, and that's called the Retroverse. So here is the Retroverse website. It's up, it's live, it's functioning well. It seems like a great place to find a whole bunch of homebrew stuff, in development stuff, and recently released stuff. And I mean, if I check out Panzer III here, I can play the game right in my browser if I wanted to. I can download the demo. It's for the NES, and it seems pretty interesting. Next up, we're talking about Dead Cells. If you're a fan of Dead Cells, I've got some good news for you and some bad news for you. Good news, Dead Cells just got an update. Bad news, it's the last and final update ever for Dead Cells. Update 35 is it. Now, fortunately, this is a pretty big update. I mean, they say they've got 3 new mobs, 3 new weapons, 3 new mutations, and a new biome effect for you to choose whether you are going to take the risk for more rewards or not. New legendary affixes, and 40 plus new heads for customization options. And in addition to all of that, they've added in more accessibility options. For example, adding an outline option for spikes, adding a button to center the minimap on the player, and also here, added options to fully invert the player and camera movement. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm a huge fan of Dead Cells. I think this game is a ton of fun, it's got a ton of replayability, and it's one of the best in its genre. You can disagree with me on that, and that's absolutely fine. On Steam, it's got an overwhelmingly positive review score, and it's currently 50% off. It is sad to see it's its final update here, but at the same time, this game has been going strong for about 8 years now, and I really don't see it going away from my playlist anytime soon. As for what's next, well, we've got the Rogue Prince of Persia, which is currently in early access and looking pretty good. It's got a very positive review right now on Steam. Next up, this is just a heads up and something we're probably going to find out about pretty darn soon during Gamescom, or maybe even not. Anyways, here it's rumored that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle will release on Xbox and PC this holiday, and also on PS5 in 2025. Now, I know a lot of people are looking forward to this game, and a lot of people have high expectations for it. Let me know your thoughts about the upcoming Indiana Jones and the Great Circle in the comments below. And speaking about games, next up is a heads up if you're a fan of RTS games. BAR, which stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Beyond All Reason, just released a brand new trailer. This one is 100% free and it's open source. Now, it's worth pointing out that the game is currently in alpha, but at the same time here, it's shaping up really nicely. And if you're a fan of RTS games, this is probably one worth checking out. And if you don't know if you're a fan of RTS games, this one is probably worth checking out because it's free. And speaking about free, next up we're talking about something that is definitely not free, and that's Final Fantasy 16. We've finally got a release date for this game. It's September 17th on PC. And there is something about it that is free, and that's the demo, which is available on Steam. The Steam store page has all of the information you need about this one, and if you are curious, the demo may be worth checking out. And speaking about release dates, next up we're talking about Sky Ocean's Wings for Hire. If you're a fan of Skies of Arcadia, you may be a fan of this game here. It's releasing on October 10th of this year. I'll drop a link to the Steam store page in the description below, and feel free to check it out. Next up, I've got some good news for you if you're a fan of Minecraft Realms, or if you have been trying to play Minecraft Realms over the last week or so and haven't been able to connect. On August 13th, Minecraft had an update to version 1.2.1.2, and apparently that update broke connections for a whole lot of people. Mojang has been working on these servers in the background over the last 6 or so days and has finally fixed the issue, at least we think so. Here's their latest update. Realm service should now be restored for all players. We apologize for the disruption in Realm service and appreciate your patience while we worked on a solution. Now, from my understanding, if you do have an active subscription, I think Mojang extended the time of those subscriptions while the service was out. But if it hasn't, let me know in the comments below. And speaking about outages, next up we're talking about not really an outage, it's kind of an outage. It's more of a release date outage per se. Anyways, Fantasy Life: The Girl Who Steals Time has just announced that instead of coming out on October 10th, they're delaying this one and we don't have a release date just yet. Some people have suggested that this game is not going to see a release. Some people are thinking that it might come out sometime in 2025. And some people are speculating that this game might be in development hell. Let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. And speaking about development, next up I would say we're talking about a development celebration of the Game Boy Advance homebrew scene. If you're a fan of the GBA, if you're a fan of homebrew, you might be a fan of this celebration over on itch.io. It's called GBA Jam 2024, and there's a lot of real cool homebrew games. This year there are 54 different submissions, and some of these you can play right in your browser. Now, I'm a big fan of the homebrew scene, so let me know your thoughts about GBA Jam 2024. Have you checked out some of these games here? What are your thoughts, and what is your favorite game? And speaking about games, next up we're talking about an upcoming game for Android and iOS from Pokemon. It's called Pokemon TCG Pocket, where TCG stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or trading card game. Anyways, this one releases in October, but at the same time, you can already pre-register. Now, from my understanding, this is going to be a free-to-play game with in-app purchases, although on their website it does say you can pre-order it. And I don't know if they're using this term interchangeably with pre-registering. I don't know, I could be wrong. Now, my gut tells me that this is going to be a pretty big game for mobile, but I could be wrong here. Let me know your thoughts about the announcement of Pokemon TCG Pocket in the comments below. And last up here, we're talking about, no surprise, PlayStation 4 emulation with Chad PS4. Now, Shad PS4 continues to make improvements in leaps and bounds. And this is Shad PS4 up and running playing Bloodborne. Things are not necessarily rendering perfect, but you wouldn't believe what happens in this one. Someone is able to beat a boss. I am not joking with you. So in terms of playable, I would say possibly not so much, but maybe in certain cases, depending on how you define playable. Now, the emulation scene always impresses me, and it's not always just the developers, but sometimes it's also the gamers, the people using the emulators who are able to get every single ounce of performance out of them. I mean, this is absolutely incredible. I don't know what's going on with Shad PS4, I don't know what's going on with some of these testers, but whatever it is, they're succeeding in leaps and bounds. I'll drop a link to this video in the description below, and I do recommend checking it out. I can't believe the development state right now. Now, on a side note here, for those of you thinking that's just a one-off and possibly a fake video, there are multiple people out there with Shad PS4 videos showcasing Bloodborne progress. I mean, multiple people are fighting enemies, beating bosses, and even more. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming and technology news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about an emulation front end on Android, Daigisho, and Daigisho just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, the latest update here is version 1.4.68, and they do recommend picking up Daigisho from the Google Play Store instead of on GitHub here because of the size of the APK. The APK on GitHub is designed for global distribution as opposed to the one that's tailored for your device. Now, to be honest, I don't hear that too much. However, if I take a look at the size of Daigisho on Google Play, it's sitting at 248 megabytes. And if I take a look at it on Google Play, it's sitting at 28.75 megabytes. So that's a pretty big difference. So as for what's new here, they've added in genre, synchronization, wallpaper, adaptive color theming, and even more. And if you're unsure as to what an emulation front end is, it basically works with your emulators to organize everything and make things look good. If you use Daigisho, let me know in the comments below. But moving on, and next up we're talking about Windows emulation on Android with not win now, but win later. And apparently here someone's got Gears of War 3 up and running on their Android device via win later. I am not joking with you. So it appears they are using a 2011 leaked build of Gears of War 3 that was working on PC. And things appear to be booting and playable, although some people are saying there is some frame skipping. Now, the person who posted this said it wasn't easy to get set up, but they are using a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, and they say they can hit 30 FPS easily and upscale it to 720p. Talk about impressive. Next up here, if you're ever interested in buying rights to video games, I don't know if this is real or not, and I don't know how this one's going to pan out. But apparently there's a website here called elitesystems.auction where you can pick up an IP and own it. Now, it's worth pointing out I haven't seen anything active just yet, but here is Dragon's Lair, and this auction is apparently for all rights for the SNES, Genesis, NES, and Game Boy versions of the game only. And this allows people to basically print and make copies of those versions of the game. Now, if this site actually takes off and there's more IPs up for sale here, I'm very curious to see who's going to buy them. If it's going to be game publishers looking to publish new versions of old games, or if it's going to be collectors wanting to hoard stuff. And speaking about interesting stuff, next up we're talking about Masters of Albion. Now, apparently this game is based on Fable's world, but it has nothing to do with Fable or Microsoft. So the creator of this game says Fable was set in Albion, Masters of Albion is set in Albion. So basically it is the exact same world, and the creator says it's because Albion is the historical term for Great Britain. It's like saying if you set a game in America, you can't set any other game in America. So Albion can't be copyrighted. It's the name of England and Wales, and that's how we get away with it. So let me know your thoughts about this one in the comments below. Do you think it's absolutely fine for Masters of Albion to be set in the exact same world as Fable? Do you think it can be copyrighted? And do you think Microsoft's going to have some sort of problem? I don't think so, considering Microsoft would have done something before now, unless they're just waiting to strike. And speaking about worlds colliding, next up we're talking about LEGO and Nintendo. And it appears that Nintendo and LEGO are still continuing on with their collaboration with some brand new LEGO sets. They've just announced LEGO Super Mario Kart sets. All of these sets appear to be under $40, so they're a little bit more affordable when compared to something like the Deku Tree set, or the Zelda set, or whatever the set's called here. So we've got Baby Mario and Baby Luigi. There's a few different sets and a few different prices, and there's also some Animal Crossing LEGO. So for specific here, there's Yoshi Bike, Standard Kart, Donkey Kong and DK Jumbo, Baby Mario vs. Baby Luigi, Toad's Garage, Baby Peach and Grand Prix set. And for the Animal Crossing stuff, there's Stargazing with Celeste, Leaf's Caravan and Garden Shop, and Able Sisters Clothing Shop. Next up, we're talking about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and we talked about this one yesterday when it was rumored it was going to get a PS5 release. And it turns out that it's releasing on December 9th of this year for Xbox and PC, and in January of next year for PS5. And there's also going to be a very interesting collector's edition that isn't cheap. It's about 190 USD, but it comes with an 11-inch globe. Now, it looks like the PS5 is not going to get this collector's edition. It seems exclusive to Xbox and PC, and also to the US only. Next up here, I'm not quite sure on how I feel about this one, but Marvel Entertainment announced Marvel Rivals. And apparently here, this is a free-to-play 6v6 game, and all heroes will be included. So this game is releasing on December 6th for PS5, Xbox, and PC. Taking a look at the gameplay here, it does actually look okay. I'm just holding my reservations about the whole free-to-play thing. I'm kind of curious to see what that exactly is going to entail. Let me know your thoughts about this one. Next up here, we're talking about 2K Games, and 2K Games announced two different games last night at Gamecom. The first one here is Borderlands 4. This game is set to release in 2025. Unfortunately, the trailer didn't show any gameplay. I'm wondering if people were going to be extra excited about this because of that Borderlands movie, but unfortunately, the Borderlands movie doesn't seem to be doing too well. But the second game that 2K showcased was Civilization 7, and they did show off gameplay from this one. Civ 7 is set to release on February 25th, 2025. I can't believe we're already almost into 2025, but here we are. But speaking about stuff launching this year, and next up we're talking about the Atari 7800 Plus, which was just unveiled by Atari. This one is launching on November 29th for about $130. And it will play 7,800 games. It comes with a new controller. It's also compatible with 2,600 games, and they say it's launching alongside a new range of games. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if these new games are going to be exclusive to the 7,800 Plus, or if they're going to launch on PC and consoles as well. And speaking about November, next up we're talking about the Pirate Bay. And in November, it appears there's going to be a brand new TV series in Sweden called The Pirate Bay, based on the founding of Pirate Bay, the people behind it, and the whole story of the Pirate Bay. Reportedly, the creators of the Pirate Bay were not involved here, but they used interviews and people associated with the whole thing. It appears this series is going to be in English, and let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. Are you interested in it? What are your thoughts about the whole commercialization of the Pirate Bay? Next up, I've got a follow-up for you on Bully. Now, we talked about this game the other day when there were rumors out there may be a remaster in the works. And it turns out those rumors are probably unfounded. Rockstar has announced that Bully will be available with the GTA Plus membership, which means this is not a brand new version of Bully, it's the old version. It doesn't appear there's anything going on with this series right now, but I could be wrong. And speaking about rumors, next up we're talking about the Samsung Galaxy S25. This isn't coming out until next year, and people are saying that it's going to be a little bit thinner in the bezel department. And this coincides with the latest rumors about the brand new iPhone as well. The iPhone 16 Pro Max is reportedly only going to have 1.15mm thick bezels. That is extremely thin here, and I don't know about you, but I actually don't mind thicker bezels. I'm not saying that thin bezels are bad. I'm just saying that when I hold a phone, sometimes my fingers tap the edges of the screen, so I don't mind a thicker bezel. I guess I'm just going to have to get used to very thin bezels. Next up, we're talking about Sony, and it appears that Sony is gearing up for some potential brand new concepts for the controllers. Earlier this month, they filed a patent for a controller that has a charging port for earbuds. And now they filed a patent for a customizable touchscreen. To be honest with you, I've got no idea how popular these touchscreen controllers would be, given the fact that people with mobile devices generally prefer controllers with physical buttons, at least from what I've seen. I don't know if a touchscreen controller would go over well for console gamers. And speaking about consoles, next up we're talking about Batman Arkham Shadow, and this game is not headed to consoles. It's going to be a MetaQuest exclusive, and they just unveiled a brand new gameplay trailer over on YouTube. I'll drop a link to it in the description below. To be honest with you, it looks interesting, but at the same time a little bit disappointing. It's exclusive to the MetaQuest. And speaking about games that look pretty good and aren't exclusive to the MetaQuest, next up we're talking about Dying Light: The Beast. And this game was just announced at Gamescom yesterday, and there's a trailer of it up on YouTube. It's coming out for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of gameplay just yet, nor a release date, but at the same time here, Dying Light: The Beast should tickle that itch for people who like Dying Light. And speaking about scratching that itch, if you're a fan of Dave the Diver and we're looking for some more content from the game, you might be excited about this announcement. It might not, depending on your interests here. But this happened during Gamescom, and Dave the Diver announced a brand new Balatro, Potioncraft, and MXM-Tune collaboration. I'll drop a link to this trailer in the description below, and feel free to check it out. Unlike Dying Light without that release date, I do have a release date for this one. It will be coming in October, so just in a few months. And speaking about something that's coming never, next up here we're talking about Blackhawk Emulator, which is being marketed as the first ever PS3 emulator for Android phones. This one I can tell you is 100% fake. It's someone else just trying to get some clout here, get some subscribers, and maybe make a few bucks. Looking at the comments for this one, and some people seem to be very excited about this one, but I can tell you they're probably going to be let down. This is going to be another one of those Artemis things, the fake emulators that pop up that kind of string people along and produce nothing. Now, I could be wrong here, but I haven't really been wrong about this stuff in the past, and I don't foresee myself being wrong about this one either. Next up is a quick heads up that Steam is currently having a Rhythm Fest for rhythm-based games, and there's a brand new game here you might be interested called Base Defense. And this is a base defense game with bass. Now, I haven't played this one yet, but the game does have a demo to get you hooked, and then it's currently 30% off. And on a side note, I do recommend checking out the Steam Rhythm Fest, as there's a lot of great discounts on a lot of great games, including Hi-Fi Rush. Next up, we're talking about Linux, and if you're on Linux and you like control over a whole bunch of stuff while you're gaming, you might be interested in game mode. Game mode gives you control over stuff like your CPU governor, enabling GPU performance mode, CPU core pinning, and even more. It is free, it's open source, and version 1.82 of game mode has just dropped. And this one's got a bunch of fixes, including fixing hybrid CPU core pinning. I'll drop a link to it in the description below, and feel free to check it out to learn more about it. Next up, we're talking about Stellar Blade, and if you're a fan of Stellar Blade and wanted to see it on PC, it's currently in development for PC. The developer expects it to be more successful than the console version. Now, unfortunately, I don't know the reason why they expect it to be more popular on PC. Maybe because of a bigger PC player base, or maybe because of the whole modding scene, or something else. If you know, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. And last up here, we're talking about PlayStation 4 emulation with, yes, you guessed it, Shad PS4. Now, we've talked about Shad PS4 on almost a daily basis, and that's because this emulator keeps making improvements in leaps and bounds. And well, today is no different here. They've implemented something brand new, the ability to add cheats and patches. Now, this is currently a work in progress, but if you wanted to see it in action, I'll drop a link to Brutal Sam's YouTube video in the description below, and feel free to check it out. This is an awesome new feature, especially for those people looking to add stuff like 60 FPS patches and even more. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. And I've even got some more stuff already on the docket to talk to you about tomorrow. We talked about a bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you do like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.
I've used this Pro controller for 2 years now. Not that one, this one. I've clocked in over 1,500 hours on this one controller, and it's the best controller. I've used this Pro controller for 2 years now. Not that one, this one. I've clocked in over 1,500 hours on this one controller, and it's the best controller I've ever used. I love the blacked out look. It has 4 paddles located on the back of the controller, and because of how they are placed, you can easily click all 4 without ever needing to readjust your hand. The triggers on this controller are the best I've ever felt. You can mechanically switch them from full length trigger to a hair trigger. And if you do this, it feels and sounds just like a mouse button. There's grips built into the back of the controller, and surprisingly they haven't worn out much considering how many hours I've held this thing. You can use it both wired or wireless, and the really nice braided cable it came with hasn't given me any problems to this day. There's a mute button on the front for your mic. The faceplate and the thumbsticks are interchangeable. You can switch between 3 customizable profiles. It's called the Scuff Instinct Pro. Unfortunately, I'm not sponsored, but I had to record this because I've used this Pro controller for 2 years now. Not that one, this one. I've clocked in over 1,500 hours on this one controller, and it's the best controller I've ever used. I love the blacked out look. It has 4 paddles located on the back of the controller, and because of how they are placed, you can easily click all 4 without ever needing to readjust your hand. The triggers on this controller are the best I've ever felt. You can mechanically switch them from full length trigger to a hair trigger. And if you do this, it feels and sounds just like a mouse button. There's grips built into the back of the controller, and surprisingly they haven't worn out much considering how many hours I've held this thing. You can use it both wired or wireless, and the really nice braided cable it came with hasn't given me any problems to this day. There's a mute button on the front for your mic. The faceplate and the thumbstick are interchangeable. You can switch between 3 customizable profiles. It's called the Scuff Instinct Pro. Unfortunately, I'm not sponsored, but I had to record this because I've used this Pro controller for 2 years now. Not that one, this.
For me, this is definitely god tier. Side buttons too sensitive and awkwardly placed. Given its high price, these are also made potentiometers instead of Hall effect sensors. Next, I have to place the SCUF Envision in the bad tier. So there you have it. These are my personal ratings for all of the most popular PC gaming.
Looking for the perfect gaming controller for your console, gaming PC, or mobile?
Three and a half years into the console's life cycle, and you finally have a proper controller buyer's guide. During my ownership of the 9th generation home consoles, I've tested and reviewed the titty nips out of a slew of controllers for the PS5. Some of them are based on the DualSense, the stock controller, disassembled from there by custom controller companies like AIM, Scuff, Battle Beaver, Hyper, Cinch, Mega Mods, and others. So those are going to communicate with the console just like a stock controller, so you can wake the console and all the DualSense features that you're used to, like haptic feedback feedback and adaptive triggers. Then there's the third-party, real deep third-party controllers that start as their own unique shape and shell design, use their own PCB or printed circuit board. We're talking about things like the Nacon Revolution 5. But one thing I do want to get right out of the way, front-loaded if you will, is going to be pricing, because it is substantially different on the PlayStation side of the house than it is for Switch and Xbox. I feel weird wearing this hat. When the controller lords have blessed you with a noggin full of hair like this, sweet mop, you don't usually cover it with a cap or a lid. Considering this is going to be one of the highest viewed videos on my channel, it would behoove me to do my hair just like it would behoove you to watch the video in its entirety. That's not because I'm trying to grab you by the udders and milk you for the view minutes or anything like that, but rather we're talking about your hard-earned shekels, your caps, your ducats. And speaking of caps or moolah, I have organized my best Xbox controller video in 3 distinct price points, and that's the same thing I'm going to do with the best Nintendo Switch controller video, where you have the entry level or budget pads, which are $70 and below. Why $70? Because that's what Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo are charging for a stock controller, a replacement gamepad, if you will. Then $70 to $180 is that mid-level price point, which is my favorite because you tend to get the best price to performance, bang for buck controllers where manufacturers are really shoving in the most features without bending you over a barrel and taking you to pound it. Unfortunately, on the PlayStation side of the house,
You know, I like to keep it light, keep it fun. I'm gonna take this.
there is no entry or mid-level segment. It starts at that $180 flagship or premium level price point, which is completely different than the PS4 console, which I reviewed several controllers from last generation that were $40, $50 generic, nameless, gameless, brandless, faceless pads on Amazon. Some of them were actually really sick. They paired right up with the console, worked seamlessly, wirelessly, but that is not the case on the PS5 side of the house. Now, what is a beneficial or good thing is the fact that from the PS4, which used Bluetooth 4.0, there was an upgrade or enhancement. As you would expect, technologies get better over time. The PS5, which came out 7 years after the PS4, has Bluetooth 5.1. That's how it communicates with its controllers, and that's great for peak speeds, consistency, not getting interference with other things in your room, being able to connect multiple devices, pair that same DualSense controller to a phone or tablet, and then seamlessly pair back to your PS5, things like that. What's not great is that it is a very strict, locked-down protocol that doesn't allow hardly any third-party controllers to be paired to the console, unlike the Xbox side of the house, which, yes, there was that major Xbox unauthorized controller ban, which I covered the news of. That'll be linked in the description below. I know this is a PlayStation buyer's guide, but maybe you're curious about that. There's a lot of misconception about that, a ton of misconception about that. The fact is, the PlayStation is truly restricted like people think in their noggins the Xbox is. So the custom controllers that you're going to get for a PlayStation 5 that don't look like a stalker are going to be the ones that start as a stock DualSense and then are customized from there, or they're a third-party controller company like Razer that has a partnership, a contract with Sony, so they can get that blue branding on the box and be a licensed authorized Sony accessory. And keep in mind, Sony's not using a restrictive wireless protocol like Xbox Wireless. It's Bluetooth 5.1, but Sony chooses to keep it restrictive, obviously, for making money, so they can charge these third-party controller manufacturers like Thrustmaster and PDP and Razer a little kickback or vig to get the branding so they can actually connect with the consoles. So all of this to say, this was all for a reason. I know I blew a lot of hot air up your tuchus, but it's all to say that controllers start at about $180 for the PS5, and all of them are wireless. I can't think of any wired-only pads for the PS5, which is very different than the Switch and Xbox, which have wired-only controllers. Another pre-word before I actually jump into talking about the actual controllers before you meet the faces, the freaks backstage, if you will. I do want to mention that I am going to skim over or briefly cover some of the PC-specific features of these controllers, like do they have ReWAS support and can you overclock them, but the primary focus of this video is the actual physical components, and then things like the warranty, customer support, QC reputation, things like that are going to apply more to people that pick this up for the console side of the house. But after I've completed this best PlayStation controller video and then the best Nintendo Switch controller video, then I'll have all 3 of the consoles covered because I've already done the Xbox One. That was the first joint to pop off. Then I can do a 4th and final, which is going to be the best PC controller. So that's everything, every controller I've tested, because pretty much everything works on PC. Without further ado, let's start talking about controllers for the PlayStation 5. Enough input delay. This video is slapping. Starting in no particular order with AIM, I guess if we were going in alphabetical order, this would also be the first company we look at. We know that they make PlayStation 5 controllers. They also make console covers, or plates, panels, if you will, for the PS5, although I reviewed those and they're pretty subpar. You have a couple of options over here. The PS5 Flood Collection is going to be these glow-in-the-dark joints. You do have 3 different designs. They're all $244, and they do come with the 3 staples. So you got your trigger locks, remappable back buttons, and then your swappable thumbstick caps. I was sent out one of the glow-in-the-dark units prototype beta joint when this first came out. They're pretty cool, very similar to any glow-in-the-dark thing. The effect only works for about 20-30 minutes after direct light exposure, and it's kind of gimmicky, but keep in mind you do have the snap plates, so you can just pop off the glow-in-the-dark ones and put on a regular set. And that's one feature I really do like of AIM is the snap plates. You can change the look of your custom controller without having to buy another $300 Pro controller. But one thing that threw me for a little bit of a loop is the fact that it says active triggers here, but then it shows the aim back Pro. It's different. The aim back Pro is their on-off trigger lock system, and active means that they're constantly digital triggers. So I would confirm that with AIM because, fuck, that's a huge difference there. And AIM's warranty, I'm going to get it right out of the way now because we're going to be talking about some of their other controllers, such as what you can spec out in the builder. So it is the only custom controller company that I know that offers a lifetime warranty, and that does cover a lot of parts or components, including the paint. So if your palm is wearing off the paint job, the hydro dipping graphics, you can get that replaced. The controller buttons, that's huge because if you get the digital buttons, those do have a tap life cycle. It should be a lot more durable for you, but if you get the membrane bad boys, the stalkers, and those get jammed in for you, and you don't really want to take apart your controller and fix it, which I advise you don't. AIM also does advise you don't. You can get that fixed here. Smart triggers, so those are the clicky digital mouse-like click triggers. Love them and recommend them. Bumpers to match, those are both replaced. The paddles are going to be the plastic swappable pieces in case you snap one of those bad boys. The bases are going to be the spider kit in the back where you remap everything. Now the actual controller motherboard, so I guess the stock controller's PCB, the printed circuit board, and then stick drift, so the modules themselves are only covered for 45 days, which I don't like. Because with these other controller companies that offer a really short warranty, like 6 months, it's super short, that covers everything. So if you get stick drift, that's covered for 6 months. As with here, that's only covered for a month and a half, which is very, very short. Lifetime on all these other parts and components, but a month and a half for stick drift. Keep in mind, if you go the Hall Effect route, probably not going to get stick drift. And you've got your pre-designed PS5 controllers, so a couple of pre-built, ready-to-ship Johns, which fluctuate substantially in price, $140 to $240. That's because some of these just have cosmetic upgrades, and some of them are pimped out to the nines. These shortcuts will jump you down to these little tear lines, but you can also just scroll down manually. We'll click on this one because it's good, clean family fun. You got your basic bitch special over here, and if you flip it around on backside, there's nothing that's going to make you happy back there, other than maybe this graphic. But no paddles, no... Why the hell get a Pro controller if you're not going to have remappable rear buttons or back?
No mames, ¿de dónde me pegó?
Of a Pro controller. But when we click this little I'm a professional box, we do notice we're missing something. Those aim back triggers, which I personally wouldn't get an aim controller without aim back triggers or the rubber grips. You heard it here. 2 must-have features from AIM. The reason being the aim back triggers are the best trigger system, period, that I've tested for the PS5. And without the rubber grips, the plastic is incredibly slick because they don't have the licensing for those PlayStation face buttons, which is the stippling or grip. So it's a really slippery palm grip if you don't go with the rubber grips, which luckily are phenomenal. But those are 2 things that you just gotta go for in the builder, and you're not gonna be able to get those by getting a pre-built controller. Also keep in mind there's no way to select Hall Effect thumbsticks here, and since it's not a builder, you are very limited or restricted as to what you can get. It's just a pre-build. Now coming over here to the builder. Cosmetically, this is a cool looking website. Click on customize now, you're gonna get a little pop-up. It's gonna let you know the 3 standard features. Then it's gonna go away after a couple of seconds. I did mention previously I wish you could just manually close that pop-up, but it just turns itself off. Now these do start at $180, but keep in mind you're also gonna have tax and shipping, which we're gonna talk about all that for all of these companies, but you're also missing those rubber grips, which I do not recommend getting an aim controller without, but you are getting the aim back triggers, 4 remappable rear buttons, which are also removable, so if you just want to rock 2 or none for a specific game, you can do that. So to get this where I would deem it respectable and ready to run, where do the grips be at? Now the aim builder is actually very easy to navigate because not only do you have this vertical bar, but you can also click on the clipboard over here and then jump to directly what you want. Bam. Aim grips, $26 option, but that's reasonable. 3 different colors here. So 206 bones. Keep in mind, I also have an exclusive discount for AIM and most of these companies, which will knock this down substantially. So right there, this is a performance-only build from AIM, 206. When it comes to customization in the builder, options, being able to select multiple colors of D-pad, triggers, stuff like that, I would list AIM near the top as they do have a lot of faceplate options. However, I do want to make note of the fact that they removed their option for metal D-pad and face buttons, which I have on my original V1 AIM spider back, and I think those look really cool, but you don't have that option anymore. Now, it is pretty surprising that each one of these components is pretty reasonably priced because AIM is one of the more expensive companies when it comes to the most expensive flagship controller you can spec out if you slather every option on the builder. Funky that each individual part isn't super expensive, but if you add everything, it does add up to one of the most expensive controllers. A couple of options I would advise speccing on an AIM controller, and a few I would advise passing on to be the most cost effective. Obviously, cosmetic stuff you can pass on unless you really care about the looks of your controller. These digital buttons, which are a $40 upgrade for both the D-pad and face buttons, absolutely get it. I recommend it 100%. Hall effect sticks, there are cheaper companies per module, and also AIM only gives the option for both modules instead of being able to get one potentiometer and one Hall effect, which you have that option with other builders. Now, this is a $50 option that does add 30 days to the build time. Rubber grips, you absolutely need to spec with an AIM controller, so you go from one of the slickest rear shells to one of the best for $26. Smart bumpers, I absolutely recommend passing on. This is the easiest feature to recommend passing on because it's $34 and bumpers are already about a 1mm squeeze that aren't a big point of failure. Pass on that. The gamer tag and logo are these stick-on decals, which are actually raised. You're going to feel it on your palm, and also the coloration doesn't really match the rest of the faceplate, so I'd advise skipping that. And also the LED RGB thumbstick option. I don't even see that in the builder anymore, but if they do still offer it, absolutely pass on it because you can't dim or disable it, and they're actually not even coordinated, so the left stick will be a different color than the right. It looks super tacky and whack. So this is how I personally would spec out an AIM controller, looking stock but performing like a beast. $311. Keep in mind, I do have an exclusive discount in the description below, which will knock that total down to math right here. Next up is going to be Cinch Gaming, who has this silly pop-up. Get out of my face. You've got your 24-hour builds over here, which are going to be your pre-builts. You've got these for Xbox and, okay, Xbox alone. Now, if you click on shop, it is basically going to break out these two tabs where you have customized, that's their builder, PS4 and 5, and Xbox controllers, and then you got your 24-hour ships, which are pre-builts, Xbox only. Now, the stick drift fix over here, because I get a lot of questions about this, it is a PCB that you can solder on the back, and this isn't exclusive to Cinch. This little stick drift fix has been available for almost 2 years from PCBWay.com. I think Vkuda made a video on it around the time it was introduced, and it's absolutely not what you're thinking of. It's actually almost identical to the Hex Phantom I reviewed recently, where once you have a potentiometer thumbstick module start to go out on you, you can recenter it, but you're still going to have issues with your outer dead zone and tension. You're really just tautening up the dead zone to where you don't have drift anymore. I think this is really stupid, to be perfectly blunt. Hopping in their builder, they have rush build speed, which a lot of these companies do let you pony up a little bit more dough for expedited shipping, but it's still long-ass build time, and you're paying additional money for basically nothing. Speaking of wait times, custom builds are 6 to 8 weeks, which is long. However, that's about what I waited for my Evil, 3 months for my Battle Beaver, about almost 2 months for my Scuff pre-order of the Reflex, although that's a pre-order, so that's different because it wasn't even out yet, but you get my point. Let's click on PS5 over here, and hovering over this little guy, what does this do? What is the point of this? It just changes the color's looks. So standard build time is 6 to 8 business weeks, or you can put a rush on that for 1 to 3 weeks build time. Which is free for a limited time. And then in this drop down, you have Builder's Choice, which means the man or woman assembling your controller is going to use their best judgment to pick a part or component that matches as good as possible with whatever's out of stock. So this builder is kind of clunky and not as easy to navigate as something like AIM, which has that little pop-up that lets you directly jump to each part or component. Here you just have to scroll manually for a long time to get down to each part. Also, extremely limited on the customization here, as the faceplates are all solid colors. colors or gradients, except for this Galaxy, which you can purchase this on Amazon for about $15 and install yourself. Very common faceplate. I will say the chain piece is pretty cheap. AIM is charging 15 bones for this little piece, and it's only $6 over here at Cinch. Also, their starting price of controllers is way lower than it was when I originally tested that Cinch controller from about 2 years ago, when I pointed out that at the time they were about 30% more expensive than the competitors when it comes to pre-builds, and then also specking out a custom in their builder. Things have changed and they have reduced their prices. A few options for the face buttons, $10 for those, $4 for a D-pad, a couple of clear options as well. No options for Hall Effect thumbstick modules, but you do have interchangeable height sticks for $20. I think that's kind of weird. That should be a standard feature on a Pro controller. Also, this kit is about $15 on Amazon. It is from Extreme Rate, and I have installed this exact kit on multiple controllers. They are interchangeable and they do feel very grippy, very nice. They call the rear shell back casing, and you can get an anti-sweat texture, which does feel very nice. They do offer laser engraving for $10, and since I haven't personally taken this option, I can't speak to the quality, if it looks like AIM's, but the fact it does say laser engraving makes me think that they're actually cutting or etching into the faceplate, which would be really cool. But here's where the price jumps up substantially, and that is if you want 2 or 4 rear buttons. We of course want 4, but here's my biggest complaint with Cinch Gaming and why I personally don't recommend their DualSense controllers, and that is the rear button layout, as they are way too close together. Even if you're an individual that prefers 4 rear button coverage with just 2 fingers, where your middle fingers can cover 2 of the rear buttons. The tips for the bottom 2, and the meat, the little bony ball for the top. That works if you have a controller like what I spec'd out from Battle Beaver, but with Cinch, they are so close that you actually get false actuations. Press both buttons together when you're not trying to. And I even have skinny fingers. I can only imagine if you had some sausage fingers. But I will say their pricing is a lot better, because this exact build was like $350 when I tested it. But what hasn't changed is this rear button layout, and because of that, in combination with pretty minuscule customization and at least 6 weeks of build time if you don't put a rush on that. Keep in mind, these are static buttons. You have to choose in the builder what you want them down to, unless you want to pop 24 extra bones for a remap chip, which of course you should have a remap chip. That should be a standard, staple, expected feature to be able to remap or bind your buttons. And they do have an option for both the triggers and bumpers for $42 to make them a mechanical mouse click. I'd like if it was separated by the bumpers or triggers for cost effectiveness, because we only really care about the triggers here. And they do also have instant mouse click digital buttons for $22. That's going to be the D-pad and face buttons. I do believe $22 to be very reasonable, considering it's a $40 option from AIM, but I haven't tested these exact mechanical buttons, so I can't speak on the actuation force or anything like that. Now, they do offer a sticked drift kit over here, and you might be thinking, cool, magnetic Hall Effect thumbstick modules, like what Hyper and AIM are offering, but no, it's actually the stick drift correction flex board, which I covered a minute ago, is for potentiometer thumbstick modules to recalibrate them when you begin to get drift to get you closer to neutral, but you're still having other issues, such as your outer dead zone. You can't really do anything for that. You need to literally resolder new modules on. What the fuck is this? TikTok video review for $15. I do believe what this is getting at is that they'll take $15 off if you do a TikTok review. They're trying to get, not free marketing, but getting their customers to do little commercials or little hype, you know, hey, check out the Cinch controller. I've never liked campaigns like that. I just find them sleazy and stinky, and the fact that they chose TikTok as their platform for that stinkage makes perfect sense. Let's move on from it. A pro USB-C cable, not an amateur USB-C cable. This one's taking college courses and it is professional. Should be, because it's $10 for a 1mm.
Uzi 9mm.
Oh my god. And then we get into the nail in the coffin as to why I don't recommend Cinch controllers, and that is the fact you have the shortest in the game in this segment, custom PS5 controllers, 30 days, slapped to the chin of its customers, or you can extend it to what is still offensively short for $35. Next up, we have Carbon controllers, who I personally have not tested yet. This might be one of the only companies I haven't actually gotten my nitty-gritty mitts on yet, and I will. But all the information I'm going to cover is based on the company's claims from their website, and then personal experiences that I've read from Reddit, my Discord, comment section of YouTube reviews, and just word of mouth on the internet. Now, for the longest time, I've said that AIM is the only custom controller company that offers a limited lifetime warranty on their controllers, but appears as if that's a goddamn lie, because it looks like Carbon does this as well. Let's read the fine print. So the warranty is actually for a periodic time frame of 1 year. However, there are some parts and components that are covered for the lifetime. Here's the catch-all. Any parts that were belonging to the stock Sony controller, the headphone jack, the actual printed circuit board, the battery, things that aren't Carbon branded, could shit out on you, and that is not covered by the lifetime warranty. But what is any modded wood components that are installed by Carbon, so things like the paddles and the clicky buttons and the hydro-dipped faceplates. If the controller is older than a year, you will need to cover shipping costs, which is really common with these controller companies, and that's both way, back and forth. So and then it also says cosmetic wear and tear is expected and will not cover under your warranty. So that's different than AIM, because they say the graphics on the faceplate wearing off, things like that, are covered, but here not so much. And here's a bit of a catch-all that the warranty is voided if it's determined that negligent or improper care of the controller caused the issue, which I guess they could deem anything. So these are their pre-built, ready to run. If you click on shop and then click on PlayStation over here, you got the Combat and Clash pre-builts. They also do have a builder over here in customize, which we'll look at in just a second. Clash is their 2 rear button, and I actually do really want to get my hands on this because this is a different rear button design than anything else I've tested, so that alone gets me excited in the gamer nether regions. But these look very similar to the extreme rate kits that you can buy on Amazon and install yourself, or if you get a Hex pre-assembled DualSense, there's a model called the Rival that's their 2 rear button that looks pretty much identical to this and probably shares a lot of the same parts. Now once you click on these pre-builts, it kind of takes you to a little customization option, so kind of a mini builder to tweak your pre-built. So you got that lifetime warranty, which is pretty limited. You do have free shipping, that's awesome. 1 to 2 day build time, that's fast. And then local support, so an English speaking chat service. So with this drop down, it actually selects some predetermined options. So the FPS Duo adds $44. You got the 2 remappable rear buttons. That's awesome that they are going to be remappable. You don't have to pony up extra dough for a remap chip. You have micro triggers and bumpers, so clicky bits up top, and then interchangeable thumbsticks. You can also change out the controller face, which is going to be a $7 option, or $11 for these 3 premium options. And you do have Hall effect options, which can be separated from the left and right module, or both for $44, which is quite cost effective. And you can also do increased tension on Hall effect modules. It doesn't tell you how many grams stronger than a stock stick that is, but you've got standard and higher tension, which you can apply to individual or both thumbsticks. Keep in mind, if you want to be able to remap clicking down the left and right sticks to the rear buttons, you need to click this option because they need to solder an extra little bit on the board. FPS quad, it didn't change the picture, but it's already this one down here. This is the 2 rear button, identical to the Hex Rival, and this is the 4 rear button, identical to the Hex Ultimate that I tested and said I really didn't like. And instead of listing 4 rear buttons, they just say 4 paddles and 4 buttons, which is true because these 2 are paddles and these inner 2 are buttons. A very funky, weird, not great rear button design. And then their top of the line is the FPS Sweat, which I think is a pretty funny name for it. The Sweat Lord Deluxe over here, which has everything as the previous versions, except you've got the rumble force and adaptive triggers removed, so I do not advise taking this option if you're going to be playing PS5 games with this controller. But if you're on the PC only, or you're just playing competitive shooters where you don't give a damn about things like that, go ahead and remove them. And this is going to go for $310, free shipping, and that somewhat limited lifetime warranty. Over here in the builder, which is interesting because it's not separated by PS5 and Xbox, it's all one big party over here. As for your faceplate options, you got these clear joints, which are $26. That's pretty expensive. You got these unique ones, which are hydro-dipped graphics, and they say unique, but a lot of these aren't specific to this company. You can buy these from Extreme Rate or Hex. And this graphic is on the Battle Beaver builder. A lot of these custom controller companies share a lot of designs. Front shell over here is going to be things like carbon fiber and wood grain. Face button options are between $3.36 to $10.76, and then you've got your remappable rear buttons over here. Does come with a remap chip, thank God. $60 for 2 of them, $70 for 4. And if you want to go buttons, which do look pretty slick, it's 33 bones for 2 of them. But keep in mind, those are static, and you have to choose what you want in the builder. Some very interesting thumbstick options that I haven't seen in other builders, like these little dotted stippled boys. And then you have a couple of options for rubber grips. These do not feel good. They're the same ones used by Hex, the Extreme Rate kits, Carbon, a couple other companies. These are not comfortable whatsoever, but they do last in the long run. They're durable, but just don't feel great. These have a little bit of both. They should last you in the long run, but they also feel really good, grippy on your hands. So I would recommend popping for these bad boys. They're also cheaper too, which is interesting. Carbon also has them Hall effect thumbstick modules, as we saw in the pre-built customizer, not the actual full-fledged builder, but you can also get higher tension. Fully pimped out, you're looking at $293.27. And just like Battle Beaver, Carbon also offers a send-in service where you can send in a stock controller as a candidate, and that will remove some of the build cost. Although I never really advise taking this option because you're out of controller, and it's always best just to get a brand new Pro Controller delivered and then keep that stock factory joint as a backup, in my personal opinion. Their website cosmetically isn't on par with a lot of the competitors. You can see it's like low resolution pictures and whatnot. Also, their builder isn't very cleanly laid out or easy to navigate, and the website just looks a little bit meh, but their controllers seem to be pretty decent, and I will be checking out Carbon in the near future. Then we've got a new contender over here called Buds Controllers, or bakamods.com, who sells parts or components, but also Pro Controllers as well. We're going to click on this quick Pro build over here because we're all discovering this together as a team. I've never actually dicked with Buds Controllers before. Controller? PlayStation. Mouse click? Yes. Okay, radical. So these rear buttons are rated for 20 million... These bad boys are 20 million clickeroonies. These have a tap life cycle of 10. I want to go for the 20s over here. I want 4 of them on the acid. Oh, you gotta be fucking kidding me. That makes it not a recommend right there. These are not remappable. These are going to be static buttons that you have to pick in the builder, and there is no option for a remap chip. Let's go to the DualSense builder. Maybe that's where the real sugar is. Now, we are very limited on cosmetics over here, as these are all the stock Sony faceplates, and then these are disassembled from Buds controllers and customized from there. Back buttons, 4 of them. Mathematically makes sense because there's 4 face buttons that I would like remapped. Add a remap chip. Yes. Now, I don't like that it doesn't show you how much the option is. You have to do the math yourself, which is difficult for somebody like myself. $17 option for a remap chip, not... The DualSense Edge, which I purchased from PlayStation Direct, actually pre-ordered it and had it delivered on launch day, review out a few days after that. I also made a comparison with the Elite Series 2, Microsoft's first-party Pro Controller, and all in all, this is one of my favorite PS5 Pro Controllers. It is one of my most common grab-and-goes, but the only problems here is, first of all, you have 2 remappable buttons, not 4, although I will say they are really unique. You've got the lever backs and the half domes. Lever backs feel like normal paddles. I don't really use them, but the half domes, which stay installed on mine constantly, are freaking awesome. Rubber grips also feel phenomenal, as they are tiny PlayStation logos or face buttons. Cool little Easter egg in there. And then you have a trigger lock or stop system, which still uses the adaptive triggers and has 3 stages of stoppage, although the middle does fucking nothing. And cosmetically, this has got to be one of the slickest looking controllers, and the biggest feature here is the fact you can remove the thumbstick modules if you do get stick drift, and replacement modules are very reasonably priced at $20 on Amazon and PlayStation Direct, although they're in and out of stock frequently. Me personally, I haven't gotten any drift on the Edge since I purchased it, and I play with that controller a lot. And I think the thing I like the most is how it integrates directly with the PS5, where you can switch profiles while you're in game. It's pretty slick. As for the Beloader Behavior, I honestly would only recommend this controller if you're going to use it for the feature of the fact it has a Beloader adapter built on board, which is pretty much the only adapter other than a Cronus Zen, which is a nefarious piece of shit, that allows you to use pretty much any controller on PS5 to actually play PS5 games. A lot of converters or adapters let you play PS4 games and navigate the console, but you get that little error message whenever you go to play a PS5 exclusive. Now, the Beloader Behavior actually lets you Bluetooth or wire tether through and use Xbox controllers, PS4 controllers, all kinds of shit. So that alone is pretty cool. But having said that, you don't have clicky face buttons or D-pad. You just got the stock triggers, and a lot of the components aren't great, including the rear buttons. There's better options out there, but it's a nice little 1-2 punch to have an adapter and controller in a $150 option. Keep in mind, this is the sale price, but every time I check, it's always on this $160 sale. You can get this in a $70 kit in either black and white to match your black and white stock controller, or $160 for the assembled joint, which I think is pretty goddamn reasonable because it comes with a carrying case and some slipover caps, which don't cost them much, but it's just nice to have. And you have a couple of OTG cables as well. As for the controller people, I did test out their basically DualSense Edge clone with click sticks that look like a couple of massive nipples on the back. This is an interesting controller, but having gotten a lot of stick time with it, I will say it feels identical to the DualSense Edge, but a little bit less comfortable. Also, the website looks a little bit not nefarious or anything, but not like Battle Beaver stuff where you feel very confident that this is a reputable company. Also, you're gonna have to do a little conversion here if you're in North America, because this squiggly line isn't the currency that we use. Oh my god. And the fact fact, they are selling the controller hanger that you hang your controller from the thumbstick caps that I bashed in that silly little worst controller accessories video recently. But in all seriousness, to not waste your time, there's no real reason to look at that controller. As for the VicMix DMG by PvP, this one should be an absolute recommend, but it's kind of not. It doesn't use magnetic Hall effect thumbstick modules, and it has these swappable modules, but that really is only to change the layout from symmetrical PlayStation sticks to offset Xbox sticks, and also to install the fight pad, which I think is a cool option for fighter players. But PvP has expressed since the launch of this controller that they were going to have replacement modules available if we get stick drift. Those are still not readily available, despite PvP making an official post that that is going to happen. There are some third-party joints you can get out there. I would wait for PvP's official option. So that's always been kind of a weird thing, that you have a modular controller like the DualSense Edge, but you don't have replacement parts for it. Having said that, it is a really sick controller. You don't have the haptic feedback vibration or the adaptive triggers, but you do have the clutch trigger system, which if you're playing on PC and don't care about adaptive triggers, it is one of the best trigger lock systems, as you can get a very, very short pull, and they're technically 5-stage because you squeeze them to where you want and then you engage them, so very customizable. Ergonomically, this is also a very comfortable controller. The rear button design is good but not great. Cosmetically, I think it looks pretty slick, and the pricing for a wireless controller, not bad, but you are missing out on some of those PS5-centric features, and it has taken way too long for official modular parts to be available, and the build quality does feel substantially cheaper than almost any of its competitors, but if you're just holding your controller and not dropping it, that shouldn't be a huge deal. Now as for our favorite X-Men, the Wolverine V2 Pro, if there's a PlayStation 5 controller I can absolutely maximum not recommend, it's going to be this bad boy here, as all of the key features can be had in a $130 wired Xbox variant. The only feature that you're getting here is the fact that it works wirelessly on the PS5 via a dongle, which has respectable speeds, but that in no way warrants the $250 price tag, considering their ergonomics are atrocious. It's not a very comfortable controller. The rear button design is completely clumsy, and there's so many gripes and complaints I had with this controller during my initial review that just reminiscing on it makes me solidify my statement that I would never ever recommend this controller. Hyper's been a real roller coaster of emotions on this channel. I reviewed my first model about 2 years ago, really enjoyed it. However, I kept my ears to the streets and heard so many customer complaints. These are customers that spent their hard-earned money purchasing two $300 controllers, some of them with Hall effect thumbstick modules, and there was a big quality control problem where a big batch of controllers were coming wonky, broken out of the box, and on top of that, there was also some issues with refunds, as on Hyper's end, they changed vendors for payments, and I'm not going to get into it all here, because if you're interested about the logistics of how stinky it is over there right now, there is a video linked in the description below, but I will caveat all that by saying I do believe all of the stinkage that's happening over there in the Hyper factory is just temporary. The owner, Cameron, did explain a way forward, their game plan, but none of that's really been implemented, and because of that, it's very difficult for me to recommend Hyper controllers because I have witnessed so many horror stories, more so than any other custom controller company. You hear these from all of the custom controller companies. There isn't a custom controller company I can think of where I haven't heard at least a handful of complaints saying, Kevin, I picked up one of them game pads you said you liked in the review. Goddamn bumper was broken on me. If I find out where you live, watch yourself, bud. Stuff like that. You hear it from AIM, Scuff, Battle Beaver, definitely Hyper. That's the main one. But in the PS5 side of the house, they do have the Signature, which is going to be their pre-built, the sub $200 Powerhouse, so they're going for bang for buck, entry level over here. And with these pre-built models, you have a couple of options in these drop downs, 2 different positions of 4 buttons. You have 4 lowest and 4 low. 4 low is if you want to cover and use all 4 of the buttons with just your middle fingers, and 4 low, which is what I rock on my Matcha Green Hyper, gives you a button underneath your ring fingers and middle fingers. And for only $10 more, $200 out the door, you can get both Hall effect thumbstick modules and 4 remappable rear buttons. On paper, that sounds fucking sick, right? Unbeatable. But again, the overall consensus is just that the customer experience over there is so stinky right now. But I'm keeping an eye peeled, and when I see the tides shift, the winds of change roll in, then I can let my audience know, hey, Hyper actually is implementing those changes that they set forth. And now the delivery time with these pre-builds is actually really short. It's showing if you place the order today that you would get this the 26th to 29th, which is only about 3 weeks. And more on that down here with the lead time drop down. Please note, this is a pre-configured controller that's made to order. So these are pre-assembled on the shelf, ready to go. Typical orders are built within 10 to 15 days and shipped out the following day. And you do have 1 year of warranty coverage with these Hypers. As for their builder, starting at $120 $30 for what is at its core a stock DualSense controller. You do have quite a few options for rear input. You have 2 rear buttons, 4 rear buttons, coverage with just the middle fingers, 4 rear buttons, coverage with the middle and ring fingers, and then the Flex Pro paddles, which I have also reviewed and compared to the buttons, and my final verdict was they are not that great. I would stick to the buttons. Extra $25 for the remap chip. You can change the color of the rear buttons, which I thought was kind of cool. It is $40 for both bumpers and triggers to be mechanical. Would like if that was separated for cost-cutting measures, and also if there was a trigger lock or stop system with a lever back there. They do have Hall Effect thumbstick modules, which are insanely competitively priced, $13 per module, and you can get them on just the left or right. Now, they are shipping much better quality modules. The first batch had a nasty jitter at neutral where it would be stuttering and sputtering all over the place, and the average error in the circularity test was pretty goddamn high. And keep in mind, the modules sourced were not supposed to be the square ones, so the average error shouldn't be that high. And then this causes a little bit of confusion, as this is a new option that was just recently introduced, and this is the auto calibration boards, which if you are going to get Hall Effect thumbstick modules from Hyper, do not unless you get this auto calibrating board for $15, as this will eliminate that jitter. Keep in mind, if you do want to go firmware calibrated, they are better now. On average, 6 to 9 average error rate and a resting value or neutral of 0.00392. That's from the manufacturer's claims. One really cool thing is if you do go Hall Effect, you do still have the option to go lighter or stronger with the tension. That's 20% less or 70% more for $15, both of those options. And that is separated by the left and right thumbstick. One aspect where Hyper is extremely limited is going to be in the cosmetic or appearance tweaks, as they only have 6 graphics or hydro dipped face plates and a handful of solid colors. As for thumbstick cap options, you have the hybrids of the PS5. You've got the Pros, which are similar to concaves of Xbox, but with a little bit shittier grip in my opinion. You've got the interchangeables, which are what I would pop for because, well, you have 3 swappable options. And then you have the domed of the DualSense Edge, which I love on the Edge, but I'm not paying extra for them here. Also a note, they called their anti-friction rings glide rings. So if you're looking for those, since they call their face buttons action buttons. Pretty reasonable there, $3 for these cosmetic options. Yep, $6.50 for V-Cats. And you can choose a separate color for the bumpers and triggers. Only thing that would be cooler than that is if you could do each individual one. Lime green on this one, orange on this top boy. But having those separated is really cool, considering AIM doesn't even offer colored bumpers. It's all black. You do have the option of rubber grips for $18. These do not feel the best. However, they should last you in the long run, as they're aimed a little bit more towards long-term durability than overall comfort. You do have an option to remove the rumble force motors for $10, which is an extra $10 if you want to leave them on with HE sticks. Am I reading that right? And then as for a warranty, you do have 1 year of coverage that includes stick drift and 7-day replacement. Now, standardized shipping is going to be 6 to 9 weeks, or for $25, you can get express build, which should be out of the factory and in transit to you within 7 to 10 days. But as you can see, this is a cheap controller at $348, and with the customer support where it is currently, I'd proceed with a little bit of caution. Over here in Corsair's controller company Scuff, we're going to be looking at controllers specifically for the PS5 platform, which we already know is going to be the Reflex family, that being the missionary position, the Pro, and the first-person shooter. Changes being listed here. I own myself a Reflex. I chose that model because, well, one, when I pre-ordered, that was the only one left in stock, and that's also why I went with orange, because that was the only color left in stock. And the reason I went with the Reflex is because it still has the adaptive triggers, and since I do use that controller frequently to play PS5 games, scratch that, flip it and reverse it, I actually have the Pro because I have the rubberized grips, which feel pretty damn good. So I personally recommend the Pro if you're going to be using this to play PS5 games, but if you're just playing on PC or just shooters where you don't need the trigs, then go ahead and pop for the FPS, which is an additional $30, but does get you mechanical clicky triggers and removes the vibration motors. So again, taking away those DualSense specific features. You do also have some pretty cool looking face plates, although I will say the standard gray also looks nice. The nitty gritty is this: the quality control got whipped into shape when Corsair acquired Scuff. You hear a lot less horror stories, and the warranty also doubled in length. I will say the rear buttons take a little bit of getting used to, and it's kind of hard to press simultaneous button presses on the same side because you basically wedge your middle fingers in this little half pipe section, but it is a much better design than Scuff was using on the PS4 era, not only from a durability standpoint, but also actuating. They just feel a lot more ergonomic and smooth. You do have multiple swappable profiles, and those paddles are removable. I don't think I mentioned that during my initial review because I didn't know, but you just pinch them and pull, and you can remove those paddles. Rubber grips feel phenomenal. This controller looks sick. It's been plugging away with no issues. I absolutely do recommend the Reflex Pro from Scuff. Next up is stock DualSense controller. That's right, Kevin, what's wrong with the OEM controller that came with my console? Absolutely nothing, and I have a comparison of stock Xbox versus stock PlayStation controllers, going over everything from D-pads, face buttons, input lag or delay on PC, warranty, durability, blibbity. Stock DualSense is pretty goddamn good. There's also other controllers I've tested, like the IFU GTP, that can be used on PS5 with converters or adapters, but I really
Ay, güey.
really want to focus on native controllers that are labeled and branded as PlayStation licensed Sony controllers in this video. But if there's a controller for the PS5 platform that you feel like should have been in this comparison, there's a very good chance that I just forgot, as I am one man with one brain cell really. So if there is a company or model that I did forget, drop it in the comment section below, and what I will do is same thing I did in the Xbox controller comparison, as there were 3 or 4 controllers that I thought of later that I had tested and reviewed but weren't in that comparison. I do a long pinned comment explaining where that controller fits in with all of its competitors. So basically the same words I would have told you via the video, but you get my written thoughts via pinned comment. So I know I didn't give you a definitive set in stone, this is the best PS5 controller, because that doesn't exist, because everyone's requirements are going to be different. But what I did do is lay out pretty much everything you would want to know about all the controller companies available for the PlayStation 5 platform, the ones that I personally tested, and also 2 that I haven't yet, but I will. But now that you're armed and loaded with this information, this knowledge, you can make a better decision for yourself. Although I will say some really good recommendations that have treated me real sweet have been the DualSense Edge, which is no surprise because that is Sony's first party offering, probably the most popular pro controller for the PS5 currently, as it is sold in brick and mortar stores like Walmart and Best Buy, and it is a great controller. I will say it'd be great if it had 2 more rear buttons and far better battery life, as that is absolute Achilles heel of that controller, as it does have worse battery life than a stock DualSense controller because it has a physically smaller battery. The Scuff Reflex Pro is also phenomenal, and the Hex Phantom, which isn't out yet as it is currently in pre-order phase. It is a Kickstarter campaign, but that's the latest and greatest model from Hex. I would skip over the Rival and Advance, as I just wasn't a fan of the overall package, but the Phantom is a different story, as I think it's one of the best PS5 controllers on the market, and if they do stick close to their goal price of $180 out the door, it'll be about $200 probably. That's a really solid option as well. One of the best options overall that I've been recommending for like 3 years now. One of the first pro controllers I a couple of days ago talking about I just released a video a couple of days ago talking about my ideal perfect best controller. If you were to mix the shape and shell design of a Microsoft Xbox controller with virtually all the niceties of a PlayStation controller, like its overclockability, gyro motion control, notably better quality control, 4 times longer warranty for the longest time, not anymore, it's a year now on both sides. Anywho, in that video, I got a couple of comments down there saying, you're basically describing the FlyDigi Apex 4, my friend, which, thinking about it long, deep, girthy, and hard, you're absolutely correct, comrades. As of current, the FlyDigi Apex 4 in my book, which has short syllables and a lot of pretty pictures, very easy to follow along with, the FlyDigi Apex 4 is currently the best all-around controller, the easiest to recommend controller for the PC and Switch platform. Keep in mind, with converters or adapters, you can also use it on the Xbox Series unrestricted wirelessly, and also to navigate the console and play PS4 games on a PS5. But that controller is so damned good, and I have gotten so much more stick time with it, learned more about it, from diddling in the software, new features, tweaks that I didn't even know existed in my initial review, to where I knew it was my duty to make a part 2 long-term follow-up review for this controller. It's the closest to the perfect gamepad that we can purchase currently. It ain't perfect by any means. There's definitely some cons, shortcomings, or areas of improvement for their next version, which will be pointed out here in this video. Without further ado, let's talk about the Apex 4, as it is the best all-around controller you can currently buy. Let's get it. So a quick disclaimer, this Apex 4 was sent for review about 9 months ago for my initial review, so this is the same unit that I'm talking about here today. Thought I'd make a little disclaimer. FlyDigi did send this controller for review. They have no idea that I'm making this video, just sharing some more of my thoughts. They don't get an early preview. I haven't been paid a single penny or told to say or not say anything about the controller. This is all my thoughts. A quick note before we get to rockin', rollin', and trollin'. I have made 3 videos on this troller previously. It's the initial review from March 2nd. That is very long. Timestamps? You little scamp you. Timestamps in the description so you can jump around.
What's up?
Then there was this part 2, which was me correcting myself and doing a demonstration of the adaptive triggers. As in my initial review, I was saying, nah, brother, sister, it ain't really like the DualSense controller, which it is, but in a very few select titles, so a much smaller library than the PlayStation 5, where virtually any game that you play, even a third party like Call of Duty or Madden, is going to have support for the adaptive triggers. As we're on the Apex side of the house, you do need to manually configure it and then launch it through the FlyDigi Space launcher in the adaptive triggers section. And it is a little bit complicated, or there's a couple of steps, I should say. So these videos will be linked in the description below. This part 2 is going over the adaptive triggers. Then FlyDigi was kind enough to send out a couple of thumbstick modules, a K-Silver Blue, which is the most common Hall Effect thumbstick module amongst its competitors, and then the actual Apex 4 thumbstick modules, which are adjustable in tension, another feature we're going to talk about because it is awesome. It is implemented so much better than the Elite Series 2, or definitely custom controllers where you can select increased or decreased tension in the builder. Now I want to quickly talk about price and where to purchase this controller. I have seen them as cheap as $80 through things like Wish and Alibaba, AliExpress, Bang Yourself Good with Bang Good, and some new in box, fell off the truck, definitely not stolen specials on eBay. Me personally, I don't recommend any of that bullschlaga that I just spit at you. I do personally recommend going through a reputable vendor like Amazon, where the recommended MSRP is $160 and has been since launch. That's actually also correlates with the, not that one, with the, what the fuck? The FlyDigi website is just so silly to browse and always has been. Great controllers, terrible website layout. Hire somebody that knows WordPress or something. It's also really fucking slow or laggy. I have a gig down and look at the sucker just slowly fading in. Are you kidding me? But when you click on the Apex 4 controller, you would think it would take you to, come on, man. You would think it would take you to some kind of a landing page where you can get some additional information, the recommended MSRPs, tech specs. No, I did mention the website's shitty, and I was correct in that. It just takes you to a link which used to be for the wrong controller. Whatever controller you would click on inevitably would take you to the wrong link on Amazon. That has since been changed. But what the hell is the Apex 4? It is the most expensive, best, most feature-rich, flagship, highest-end controller from FlyDigi, which is known as China's #1 controller company. And the key notable features of the Apex 4, there is a shitload, so I'm gonna rattle them off real quick, and then we're gonna touch on them in more detail later. You do have magnetic Hall Effect thumbstick modules, which are far less likely to develop stick drift. Those are also adjustable tension, and they do go extremely light, where you could basically sneeze on them and it's registering, all the way to an insane amount of strength or resistance. And this happens on the fly, although I do have a little problem with the fact you have to remove both of the thumbstick caps and the D-pad and the faceplate to get to the tool to adjust the thumbstick tension, which you're probably not going to do very often. But what I recommend you do, if you don't care about your faceplate very much, is taking a little Dremel or cutting wheel and slicing a small little slit in the side of the faceplate where you can remove and reinstall that tool without having to take off the faceplate. Although keep in mind, you'd also have to drill holes where the flat tip tool actually goes to increase the tension of your thumbstick. So you need to cut a hole right here on the side and then drill here to make it work how it should out of the box, to where you don't need to remove all that shit to adjust the thumbstick tension. You do have the force feedback triggers, which is a first in this controller. And if you're on the PC side of the house launching through the FlyDigi Space application, there is a select few amount of games that work identically to the PlayStation console, where you have those adaptive triggers that get stiffer or lighter depending on the action on screen. But at all times, you can go into the onboard screen, which we'll talk about because it's a feature I honestly think should have been ditched. But you can go onto the onboard screen and you can adjust from 3 levels, well, technically 4 because one's off, but 3 levels of trigger stoppage. Now, I do still prefer having a physical lever because you can still force your way past the motor. What I mean is you pull the trigger and it has that trigger stop, but then you can squeeze past it and it's just going to push into the motor, as opposed to an actual trigger lock blocker stop system, where if you do that, you're breaking something in the controller. But the cool thing is you can adjust those on the fly, and in its stoppiest stop mode, it cuts out almost all of the trigger pull. Also, you have a 1000 hertz pulling rate out of the box, which does give you just under 1 millisecond of input lag or delay. And the cool thing is that is both wired and wireless. Keep in mind, this does have 3 modes of connectivity, but if you want that speed, you're using the 2.4 gigahertz fly speed dongle, not Bluetooth. Then you have the screen, which does allow for a decent amount of control. It is nowhere near as in-depth or as much customization as something like the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra. And also cosmetically, the screen doesn't look that great, and there are several limitations. For example, you can't even actually turn the screen off. It's always going to have a static screensaver. So what I did is just uploaded a all black picture and used that as my screensaver, so it kind of looks like it's off, but you can't really turn that screen off. It's also very tiny. It says it's full color, but the only time you're going to see that is with the screensaver. Whenever you're browsing through the options, you're really only going to see white and blue. And I do think that the build costs from this one feature could have been reallocated towards better parts or components, which there already are fantastic parts or components with this controller, but maybe shave down the price to $120 on Amazon by not having that screen, which also is a huge fingerprint magnet and kind of works like a little makeup mirror kicking back your reflection at you in case you want to see how sexy you are when you're slapping them back to the lobby. You do also have a pretty goddamn good vibration suite. It is not haptic feedback, and it's not standard rumble force. It's that middle way point, which is rumble plus motors, meaning they're still a counterweighted stack, just like typical rumble force motors, although they are a little bit more accurate, quieter, and are getting closer to the effects reproduced with haptics. Battery life wise is no slouch whatsoever, as you have a 15 milliamp hour battery on board. You do have mechanical face buttons, which are the Micro Switch 2.0, which are deemed as being lighter and faster. Don't know about all that, but they do feel phenomenal. Cosmetically, I do think the controller is absolutely gorgeous, even with the RGB engage, which usually I have turned off to increase battery life, but I do think it is implemented very nicely on this controller. This RGB can look like a huge tacky sack of crap or look really visually pleasing. I think it's the latter on this one. You do have full control of the controller with the Fly Digi Space application, which is actually pretty gosh darn good. In fact, I would currently rate it in my top 3 controller programs, that being the Fly Digi Space. The Victrix Gambit application on both Xbox and PC is phenomenal, and I can't really think of the last one that I really like. I guess the Elite Series 2 and DualSense Edge, because they're integrated directly with their home consoles. There's other apps out there that aren't chunks of crap. The D-pad I actually do like quite a darn bit. I do not like how far it sticks off the front faceplate fitment wise. That's super weird. That literally just comes down to this plastic dish, which is a snap-on piece. You don't have an included swappable option. This is removable, so you can remove the front faceplate, but this is a omnidirectional D-pad, as you would expect. That means in every damn direction, and it is a mechanical switch, although it is one of those hybrid mechanical switches that really shoots itself in the foot because it completely negates all the perks or benefits of a mechanical switch, at least durability wise. This does have a 1 mil. Okay, the controller captain. This is the Gamer Heaven, and we are comparing the 3 most popular flagship, very expensive Xbox wireless controllers. And I'm going to pass it off to my scrappy assistant, who's not me, and he'll explain the format of the video and how many clothes you should have on at this point. We are gathered here today in the courtyard to watch 3 elite titans beat the shit out of each other. Well, technically only one's an elite. The other 2 are a couple of mammoths from the Pro Controller world. We're talking about Corsair's flagship offering, the Scuff Instinct Pro, as in you've got to have a killer's instinct to use that goddamn gamepad. And then, of course, it wouldn't be a party without the Elite Series 2 stumbling in drunk, because it's been pre-gaming since yesterday at noon. That's how you earn a quality control reputation like the one you've got. But in all seriousness, all satire aside, professionalism face on, we are going to compare the 3 most popular flagship, high-end, expensive, for lack of a better word, wireless Xbox One and Series controllers. They are, of course, cross-generation Xbox One to Series. Unlike the PS4 to 5, you can use PS4 controllers on the 5 until you go to play a PS5 game, then it that tells you you're barking up the wrong alley, Buster. But why I've chosen these three titans to enter the Coliseum to fight for our amusement, considering I have a slew of other Xbox controllers in 3 different price points. You got the entries, the mid-level, and then the flagship beast. But I've carefully selected these 3 for a reason. The Elite Series 2 is the best-selling Pro controller of all time. The DualSense Edge is eventually going to catch up with it neck and neck because they are both first-party controllers, heavily marketed from Microsoft and Sony, readily accessible. They're sold in brick-and-mortar stores, Walmart right there in the gaming section, Best Buy, you've seen it there, Amazon, Newegg, it's all over the place. You can't turn your eyes anywhere and not see a box. And Microsoft ain't really new to the game. The first Elite dropped in 2015. I've got a slew of content on the channel about that. Then the revision, the Series 2, came out in 2019. Then the Core, which is a whore for sure, release date right here on screen. And there are pretty validated leaks showing that we are going to get an Elite Series 3 sometime in 2024. Radical, so it makes sense that the Elite Series 2 is here. Now, Scuf, also a huge Pro controller company, probably the most famous if you get away from just first-party joints and into the third-party world. A lot of casual controller players don't know that Hyper exists, or Battle Beaver, or AIM, or Cinch, or Mega Mods, but they all know about Scuf because the marketing campaigns have been extremely aggressive. It's owned by Corsair, who also owns Origin PCs and Elgato, and the controllers as of recent for this console generation, so the last 3 years, the Series S and X and the PlayStation 5, have been really good. Not to mention the quality control has drastically been whipped into shape when Corsair acquired Scuf. And then the latest entry is being called the greatest by many, and that is the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra, and it is a hell of a controller. If you haven't caught my comprehensive review, it is linked in the description below. Actually, all the reviews for the 3 controllers that we're putting head to head are going to be linked in the description below if you want me to go part by part, component by component, deep dive into that one controller. But in this video, we're going to be comparing the 3 controllers on a multitude of categories and finding out who is the winner. What's the best Xbox/PC controller? Keep in mind, you get an Xbox controller, of course it's going to work on PC. I mean, a baked potato, a pager, your mom's diddly bit in a drawer, it's all going to work on a PC. You can push driver support for it. Welcome aboard, Stallion or Stallionette. Over 200 gamepads tested, not letting off the throttle. Controller looking like a model. Reviews go down smooth, pass me the bottle. I got paddles, back to the lobby with a waddle. Gaming news, gear reviews, more controllers that you can use. A man of many faces, recording by the Smokin' Aces. I wasn't born the controller, Captain. It was you bucket Broncos that made it happen. Enough input delay. This video is slapping. How this video is going to be structured or organized, it's going to be just like my individual controller reviews where it is broken part by part, component by component, which is going to be timestamped, reflected in the description and timeline of the video. So if you're looking for one topic, you can find it there. But I know you're not going to jump ahead to the verdict like a sleazewad. You're going to watch the whole video. It's long as shit, and you're just going to sit there patiently. But let's just kick off this comparison with the packaging and included accessories. And in my opinion, Scuf is a little bit under par here because they are the only controller that doesn't include any kind of a carrying case to protect your controller and also keep all the loose accessories together. And that's also interesting considering it's the most expensive controller in this comparison. Packaging wise, Scuf has the theme color of this kind of burnt orange, which is super dope. Hyper's kind of not ripped it off, but they've emulated it and it looks good. Then the Elite's also quite an unboxing experience. Word of her has gotten around the town. We know what she's here for, and it's breaking in people's hands, but being a damn good controller when she's not broken. And then the Turtle Beach, the packaging wasn't necessarily stimulating, but you do have a very nice protective carrying case, which holds all of your loose accessories, and you do have a dongle, which the other 2 controllers do not have, because they are both using what's called Xbox Wireless to connect to the console, which is Microsoft's proprietary wireless connection to their console, so you shouldn't get interference with other devices like Bluetooth and other dongles. Keep in mind, you can also get a $20 dongle that will allow you to use Xbox Wireless on Windows 10 or 11 PCs. It's not baked into your motherboard or anything. You have to get this dongle, and it allows you to pair up just like you would to your console. But the input lag or delay is fierce on those. I have a video on it. It's like 16 milliseconds, which is a lot if you're playing on PC or anything for that matter. But I've been playing B-roll from the unboxing experiences from all these controllers, so you can kind of get an idea of what the boxes look like and what I looked like on those days, you know? The cut of my jib. What did my haircut look like at that time? What shirt was I wearing? It's going to be very embarrassing if I'm wearing the same shirt in some of that B-roll. It's almost a draw between the TB and the Microsoft because they have a pretty good carrying case and they both have a charging dock or cradle that both Both do allow you to charge outside on your desk or inside the carrying case with a little pass-through, and they're both magnetized, snap in like a little dock. The Scuff, not so much. It's using disposable AA's. But where the TB really falls behind its competitors is going to be in the included thumbstick cap department. It has these slip-over joints that are basically like little condoms that slip over the caps, and they suck. They're an absolute cop-out, and there's 3 expected features of a premium or pro controller, and that is going to be trigger stops or locks to eliminate most of the trigger pull, so you have an instant click, remappable rear buttons or back paddles, and swappable thumbstick caps, maybe a little bit taller, domed and concave, stuff like that. You're not getting that on the Turtle Beach, which is a $200 pro controller. As we're on the Elite, you have a really nice suite of included thumbstick caps, a little key that allows you to tighten up the thumbsticks because there are 3 degrees of tension. We'll talk about that during the thumbstick section. I love it. So in first place for packaging and included accessories, it's the Elite. Then in second place, the Scuff. Despite the fact it doesn't have a carrying case, it actually does have 2 really good thumbstick cap options. And then bringing up the rear, the Tookis, is the Turtle Beach. Now as for the cosmetics,
Let's call with a C, not a K. Car.
as for the cosmetics or appearance, this is incredibly difficult because these are 3 of the most gorgeous controllers I've ever laid my eyes on. The Elite, classy, understated with that flat matte black design. We're not even talking about the core variant because that wouldn't even be involved in the conversation. It'd be dead last because it looks and feels cheap and ugly. But the OG Elite Series 2, it has a rubberized soft touch material which looks and feels phenomenal, and I've barked about the appearance of the Elite Series 2, praised her in the past for being gorgeous, and I'll do it just once again. It is one of the most beautiful controllers, and that's why I've had this controller since 2019, and I have not customized it. Yes, indeed, you heard me correctly. This is the same controller, the Elite Series 2, that I've had for 4 years, late November of 2019, and it still works flawlessly, and I do use it frequently as well. It's not one of the controllers that just sits on the wall or something. This is in the living room, and I use it a lot. Top 5 used Xbox controllers I have. Scuff is also gorgeous. However, with the Scuff, you do have a few options which you're not going to have with the Turtle Beach or the Elite. They're going to look all the same. With Scuff, you have these magnetized face plates which pop on and off, and you can buy replacements on the Scuff website to change up the look of your Pro controller, which I think is really sick. Not to mention the Stalker that I have here, which is kind of this graphite gray with caution or burnt orange around the anti-friction rings, is so goddamn gorgeous. Then we pick up the Turtle Beach Stealth, and things don't get any easier. My decision gets harder because this is a beautiful controller as well. I will say it's not as subtle, it's not as timid, it's more rambunctious. A lot more stuff going on here. You've got bronze on the bottom, you got black on the top, rubber grips on the side, and then silver on the top. So a little bit of a clash of colors here. And because things just don't blend together and sit as well, first place is going to go to the Elite Series 2, second place to the Scuff Instinct, and third place to the Turtle Beach, but they're all good-looking controllers. As for ergonomics or comfort, the Elite Series 2 and the Scuff Instinct are almost identical because they have the identical shape and shell design, the same shape. But the rear buttons do make a big difference here. With the Elite Series 2, you can remove 1, 2, all of the paddles if you want, but we're talking about it with all 4 of the paddles installed because, you know, that's the Pro controller way. One of the most comfortable 4 rear button, or paddle I should say, designs I've ever felt. Absolutely beastly. The Elite 1 I wasn't a huge fan of. I'm not going to get into it here because this video is going to be longer than it needs to be already. There were some major revisions from the original to the Series 2 as it applies to the rear paddles, and this thing feels stupid comfortable in hand. The Instinct Pro is comfortable but not as comfortable. You do have these 4 rear buttons that are sunk damn near flush with the rear shell, but they stick out at just a kind of a silly angle. Yeah, you can see that. Hell yeah, you can. Which I'm not a huge fan of, but the rubber grips do feel better than the Elite Series 2's rubber grips, which are more durable than the original but a little bit harder, so you sacrifice comfort, how good it's going to feel for you, but it should last longer for you. These feel phenomenal, but are more susceptible to break apart. I've already heard reports of these peeling on people. Then you've got the Stealth Ultra, which has some killer rubber grips, but only on the side. They're smaller than the competitors. It doesn't wrap all the way around the palm grips. It's just on the side, which I thought was kind of silly, but they do feel the best of all the rubber grips.
Hola, dormir.
Turtle Beach, Scuff, Elite for the rubber grip department. But